Good evening and welcome to the Extreme Tech Challenge European Regional Finals, coming to you from Factory Berlin. My name is Catherine Bischoff and I lead partnerships and strategic alliances at Factory Berlin. We are the largest community of curated innovators and creators in Europe, with over 4,000 members from 70 different nationalities, interdisciplinary backgrounds, who are exploring new business opportunities, sourcing talent and investment, and redefining the way our future functions. Inspired by the United Nations 17 Sustainability Development Goals, the Extreme Tech Challenge supports and showcases innovators harnessing the power of technology to address the greatest challenges facing humanity and our planet. Through this global startup competition, XTC, as it's called, provides top contenders the potential to global visibility, the ability to raise capital, network with leading corporations and VCs, and gain mentorship opportunities they need to pioneer technological breakthroughs and help power a sustainable future. It was founded by Young Sun, former CSO of Samsung, and noted venture capitalist and partner at Charles River Ventures, Bill Tai. Tonight, we'll see the top contenders from across Europe in the categories of healthcare, smart cities, transportation, clean tech, energy, and enabling technologies. But to start us off tonight, we're going to have an important conversation about the investment landscape. We cannot reach SDG goals without financing into the right direction, and money is one of the vehicles for creating a sustainable world. There's a misconception that doing good and doing well don't go together. However, this isn't true, because if we look at the major trends which underlie our society, aging population, climate change, water scarcity, among other things, to handle these trends would seem like a very smart investment choice. And companies that are identified to do so need to be getting that investment. So let's get the discussion underway with our panel of investors. We have Dr. Lauren Harrison-Lentz from Revent VC, Dr. Fabian Heilmann from Early Bird VC, and Tim Schumacher from TS Ventures. We're fortunate to have Alexander Putu from Spark Global moderating the discussion. Alex is a serial entrepreneur, angel investor, and innovation coach who is deeply committed to social impact. He's built multiple entrepreneurial ventures, including Global Venture Partners, Overture, Game Genetics, Surplus, Rehago, and then most recently, Spark Global, whose vision it is to eliminate food waste in the global supply chain while driving down climate damage. In 2020, Spark was selected out of 2,400 international applicants as a finalist in the Extreme Tech Challenge and went on to take global first place in XTC's Smart City category. So I'll leave it to the four of you for this discussion.
Yes, thank you so much, Catherine, for the warm introduction. Very pleased to be here, and great pleasure to have you, Lauren, Tim, and Fabian. Can you guys hear me? Okay, excellent. Tim, we can't see you. Are you with us?
Yes, the host needs to enable the video, actually.
Okay, maybe we'll wait a few more seconds. There you go. Okay, excellent. Thanks for joining, Tim. Pleasure to have you guys. And why don't we kick off? So, it's all about funding and impact investment. What's the problem? Is it a lack of deal flow or a lack of money when it comes to impact investments? Lauren, ladies first.
Sure. Thanks for the question, and good evening, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here. I would say definitely not for a lack of deal flow. I mean, I think as Catherine started out, these challenges, these are huge opportunities, and more founders have recognized that. And so building a company focused on climate change, focused on healthcare, focused on addressing problems with their education system, these are the big opportunities of tomorrow. And I think we've seen a real inflection point a couple of years ago where more and more founders kind of gone through the first wave of tech, maybe been a part of a couple of great companies, maybe seen how you really scale a business and said, okay, now that I have that experience, how can I use that experience to actually address these challenges? And so at least here in Germany, we're seeing a huge number of companies that have been founded addressing these challenges. I think the problem is that there's perhaps still a little bit of a mindset more broadly in the ecosystem that kind of doing good means that you're not going to build this large company. That's changing, but I think that has been historically a little bit of the obstacle. But again, we really see this as a changing trend.
Excellent. So it's not a problem of supply, let's say. So when it comes to demand or money or funds, Tim, you go back many years as an impact investor. Like, how do you see the landscape changing when it comes to capital? We have a couple of established funds in Germany, like Ananda and One Venture and so on. There's more on the horizon, like 4P. How do you see that landscape changing, Tim?
So definitely for the better. I see more and more money flowing into sustainable startups, especially combating climate change. I think that's the most important topic of all. And so definitely there's more money coming in. There are also more founders who realize that they don't want to spend their life chasing some mobile game or some ad optimization technology, but they want to really devote it to the really big problems of the life. And so definitely there's more and more coming. I think what's the challenge is to find founders who really want to make an impact, because as always with a company, there's an idea is worth something, but it's even more important to build a really big company and thereby also make an impact. And impact and financial profit actually go line in line and hand in hand. If you don't build something big, you will actually not make an impact, neither from a sustainability nor from any other viewpoint. And that is the challenge, to find founders who are willing to become as big as the Googles and Facebooks of this world, but in a sustainable fashion.
Got it. So Fabian, when it comes to impact, we talk about impact a lot, but what's the definition? We know there's no one and only definition. How do you define impact or sustainable startups or sustainable investments? Like, what's your definition? What might be a good definition to work with?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Alex, and good evening, everybody. So essentially, we look at the definition of impact in a 3-step approach. So step 0 is essentially what we've been doing in financial capitalism, in public and in private equities, and also in VC for the past 50 years. And then the step 1 that you can take is essentially go for the typical ESG screening, which we've seen around now for 10, 15 years. And some players have been adopting it to a larger extent, some to a lesser, but essentially it's always coming down to a blacklisting approach to divesting in the public markets and to being a bit sensitive around all 3 factors in the private markets. But the ultimate step towards impact investing or actively seeking impact is the one that is marked by putting up impact hypothesis from early on, when you start looking at an investment case and asking yourself proactively which environmental, socially valuable KPIs is this business going to move? What is it optimizing for? And also in terms of scoping it, or checking the order of magnitude, how meaningful can the impact of a given company with a given product strategy, with a given go-to-market strategy, how meaningful can that impact be in a 5 to 8 years range from now?
Yeah, got it. So when I work with my teams, and I've been looking at impact for 5 years now, our definition was like a combination of technology, business model, and purpose. Yeah, whatever purpose means. It could be like individual SDGs, for example, but that 3-step approach to say it needs to have a business model, otherwise it can't scale and it doesn't move into impact. If possible, there's a lot of technology to really scale the mechanism and the business model, but then also purpose. Lauren, from your point of view, is it chicken and egg to say what's more prominent or visible at first? Is it the ambition to go for impact, or is it like a good business model, which needs oftentimes creativity, because oftentimes we need to put business models into a space where there is no business model? What's your experience?
I think the key thing is having this intent to really solve a large and meaningful problem. And I think if you have that intent and are really focused on the problem, both of these things follow. I mean, a big problem is a big business case. And yes, it takes iteration on the business model. I completely agree with your point here. But I think if you really kind of maintain that problem focus, you're going to be driving towards impact, and you're also going to be driving towards scale.
Yeah, I mean, when I think back, and some of us remember, like I'm an old guy, so like I certainly remember, like Google in the early days didn't have a business model, which is hard to imagine these days because it's a very a prominent company. But when they started, they just focused on product, and with the best possible search, and then got funded, obviously, and then the business model kicked in later on. Is that a mechanism you also can imagine for your investments, Tim, or do you demand a business model in place when you offer an investment?
Well, no, definitely. I mean, there are cases where the users come first. I mean, the most prominent example of my portfolio is the company behind the ad blocker, AdBlock Plus, where there were millions of users wanting to fight annoying ads before we had a business model, and then the same thing as happened with Google, of course, also prevailed there. If you have a lot of users, there will always be some sort of business model. It can always be better or worse, but if there are users, if there are eyeballs, there is a business model. But it's also important to think that in other areas you have to, the point you mentioned before, you have to have a benefit for the user in order to make an impact. I think what impact founders, for example, often get wrong is they think impact is enough to get users, and it's not. It might be for a very small niche, but you actually need to solve a real pain of someone to win them as a user and ultimately as a client.
Right. Fabian, when you look at your portfolio and your investments in the past, and they're not necessarily all impact, of course, but when you look at your portfolio, how do you think about sustainability? Would you like to add, sustainability components to your existing portfolio companies? Is that a seamless mechanism to add something to the strategy or to the business model? Or do you look at impact and sustainability investments as a new breed, as a new form of companies and funding?
Yeah, that's a good question. And, I mean, zooming out, I'd say, first of all, we need to divide the VC landscape into incumbent players, such as Early Bird, such as HV Capital, Accel, Index, Baller, Northern, you name it, that have been around for 10, 15, 20, 25 years and are managing anything typically in the range at Early Bird 1.5 billion euros spread out across an active portfolio of 60 companies. Divide by those players on the one hand side, who some of them get increasingly ESG and also impact minded, some not, and then basically the new kids on the block. So those players who put impact front and center in their investment strategy and into their pitch via LPs, who are essentially, I'd say, standing side by side with the traditional financial VCs, and then some of them are basically, moving towards the intersection. And Early Bird is exactly one of those cases. So for 20, I'd say now 24, but for 22 years, it has been a classical financial investor working with the fiduciary duty towards their LPs of delivering 20+% net IRR across 6 fund generations so far, with some restrictions, of course, but essentially not actively investing for impact. And our journey has started pretty much 2 years ago with the formation of the climate tech investment practice, where we said, okay, next to our major verticals in fintech, insurtech, in enterprise SaaS, industrial tech, etc., we want to explore the space. We want to explore investments at that intersection between climate impact, can be carbon, but also water, plastics, circular, by and large, and for-profit investing, and so we did, and so far we've been looking at 700-800 deals over the past 2 years, but really with the filter of those deals competing head-to-head against the most promising non-impact related deals, and that's also. In all honesty, that's also the challenge. So if you have a heritage of building companies like your iPath, which is now imminently IPOing at NASDAQ, range 30-40 billion whatsoever, and 26 Smava, Beechained, you name it, and it's not so easy to get those impact deals with a clear impact intention and working at that intersection to get them basically into the portfolio. And this is what we see many of the established players struggling with, because it means an evolutionary kind of transformation of their heuristics, of their patterns, of the way they invest. And it's been successful for them in the past. They need to actively step away from it, at least incrementally, if they really want to score at that intersection. And that's really, that's really what we are doing now. And that's almost also an effort of, to some extent, even I'd say a cultural or an investment cultural transformation that addresses the whole firm.
Yeah. So I think intersection is a great word, Lauren. Like when we jump ahead, mentally and say 2030 climate goals, we don't have a lot of time, right? So we need to scale really fast, crack global problems. When we do a small bet here and say who's the first impact unicorn, perhaps, is that a brand new company, like a tech for good company that, hasn't existed up until now? Or, as Fabian pointed out, there might be a transition where existing companies transition to impact, pick that up, successfully and move towards the first, let's call it, impact unicorn. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I would say on the impact side, we've talked a lot about climate. It's also not just climate. I mean, there are already, I think, some digital health companies who are progressing quite well, and I think are really well on their way also in the climate space. And I'm loath to pick favorites at the moment. But I would say, I don't think that it's a company who is making a real pivot towards impact. And this gets back to the point I made before. I think kind of the companies who are really going to succeed are the ones where this is part of their ethos, it's part of their DNA, it's why they exist. I mean, the ones who are, not the founders who can't sleep at night because they're worried about climate change and who really have this ambition to build a big business. So don't really see the scenario where we see kind of existing companies see the trend or the mega trend around climate, around some of these impact topics, and make a pivot to position themselves more. I mean, at the end of the day, the users are also, I think, quite adept at seeing through value propositions and understanding kind of where it is authentic and where it's not. But I mean, there are a number of companies on a very good path. I think both in the climate space, we've seen a lot of great companies being founded the past couple of years, particularly in Europe. And I think when we also think about the landscape more broadly, one thing that Europe does very well is it has had climate more on the agenda, perhaps, than actually many other countries globally.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks for showing your view. Tim, you've gone back building tech companies. When you look at tech and green tech, what do you think is your better positioned or at a disadvantage when it comes to global competition? Let's call it competition for the lack of a better word, but when it comes to who leapfrogs forward, and these could be technology players or platforms, what's the position of Europe? When you look at teams and founders compared to US or Israel, for example, what's your point? What's your view?
Well, I think we're seeing something similar as we've seen in the internet world, is that actually Europe has an abundance of excellent talent, great engineers, great developers, also a good infrastructure, but then very often both American but also Asian money comes in with a lot more force than the Europeans. And as always, we might make the same mistake we've made in other fields of being too slow, underfunding, and there, of course, we shouldn't make that mistake, because we have every ingredient to succeed. We just need to build it and build things fast and make that transition fast. And of course, and there I'm actually very hopeful also for Europe is policy should help. If we would have a CO2 price of 200 euros per ton, that would be the single biggest thing politics could do. And then it would really foster an entrepreneurial fireworks of new ideas and things, and the markets and founders, great founders would do the rest. And if something like that happens, then I think Europe can be ahead.
Okay, I mean, my personal experience is when we won Extreme Tech Challenge last year, we were just funded 4 months before. Yeah? So things happen really quickly. and maybe because we build alliances and partnerships and we focus on SDG number 17. Fabian, what's your belief when you look at the future and say, like, it's not just about deal flow, it's not just about technologies, and not just about funding? What do we need as an ecosystem to really drive impact as a whole, right? Like, there will be engines and founders in the end who are all human beings basically, but how do we need to think as partners or in partnerships, alliances, to really get to the goal that we all envisage when it comes to climate and other impact metrics?
Yeah, so there's a couple of points that come to my mind. So on the one hand side, I think we see, and Lauren has been speaking about that earlier, we see a tremendous mindset shift in the new generation of founders, especially those kind of generation Z-ish, between 25 and 35 years of age. We see, I would say, by our data, it's a bit soft data, but I would say anywhere between 40 and 60% of those founders already put impact, not necessarily front and center, but bake it from day one into the DNA of their company, some to a higher degree, some to a lesser degree. And that was absolutely the opposite 10 years ago in the ages of, the rocket internet, B2C copycats, let's make money, make it fast. And people were completely disconnected. And that included myself, by the way. Yeah. I mean, not that I was working for rocket internet, but essentially my brother and I back in those days, 2008, we were also taking US business models to Europe, and little connection had we to the problems that we were solving, little connection had we intrinsically really to the product that we were building. And it's a journey, and today we are where we are, yeah? And found purpose, just like those founders, in the idea of leveraging our know-how, our capital, our reach, essentially for the purpose for advancing the higher purpose and for giving back both to society and to environment, while I see actually both as closely interlinked. Yeah. So this mindset shift, I think, is the first important point, and that's not only true on the founder side, but that's also a shift in consumer demand that we are witnessing, and consumers are making their selections from which brands they buy with a much more stronger filter on consciousness, on basically on looking at the positioning and the responsibility that those brands and manufacturers take. Regulation, I think, is another important aspect, and Tim was just speaking about it. I mean, the single biggest favor we could do ourselves as society, and also for planet and climate, is indeed, I 100% agree, is carbon pricing. No exceptions, really, in that range, 120 to 200 across all industries and ASAP. That would absolutely basically lead to an almost disruptive moment across many industries, where those providers who are able to render services or produce physical products in a much more climate-friendly way overnight are becoming from underdog to new champion, and that would make things much easier. Another aspect on the regulation side is clearly access to capital, or basically driving capital towards VC and also growth equity as an asset class. Still in Europe, I would say, today, the early stages, there's somewhat a balance between supply and demand on the VC side, but in growth stages, and Tim pointed that out, and it's true when you look across our portfolio as well, the growth and late stage side, there's simply a lack of capital in the European ecosystem. It's also due to the fact that we don't have endowments and the large pension schemes that are fueling 50-60% of the capital in the US ecosystem. We just don't have that. And those sources of capital we do have are not really investing, or not meaningfully investing in tech.
So basically, we all know the VC landscape, let's call it, quite well. But like from my experience, when I started Spark, for example, I reached out to family offices who play a role in the industry, like industry insiders when it comes to food, logistics, supply chain, and so on, which was absolutely amazing experience. Yeah, Lauren, what do you think might be the right mix of let's say, capital when it comes to funding for sustainability or impact startups? Is it just VC, or is it just family offices, or could it be a good combination on a case-by-case observation? Do you see new players coming to the market when it comes to impact funding, or is it just a shift of mindset, as Fabian suggested?
Well, I mean, I'm from a fund which I would say is a new player and new kid on the block, which is Revent. I mean, we're an impact-focused VC, early stage focus based in Berlin. So yes, and I would say we're part of this. We're part of this change. And I would, from the vantage point of being a VC who's speaking to a lot of family offices as well about the possibility, like their interest in the impact space, their interest in sustainability, their interest in doing both direct investments and fund of funds. I mean, family offices are a really interesting potential financing partner, I think, for many of these startups, because the appetite is really there. I think this has also been kind of something that's happened also with the generation change, not just among the founders, but the generation change of the family offices. Kind of as the new generation is coming into family offices, they are also saying, actually, it's important to me that we have impact or sustainability or combination at least, if not the heart of our strategy, but as a part of it. So I think family offices are becoming more and more active in this space and are looking for direct investment opportunities. So for sure, an interesting potential partner for startups. And then, of course, VCs. I mean, both the new kids on the block like Revent and others, but also, as Fabian said, I mean, kind of some of the more classical, very well-established VCs are now putting much more of an emphasis on this, and some mean it more seriously than others. But the ones who mean it seriously, I think, are really a very good partner.
Excellent. Yeah, Tim. So, when we look at, the startups pitching today, what can we, as founders and experienced folks, give back to the next generation of founders? Can we make sure, to mentor new founders, to make sure, our existing knowledge actually makes its way to the new startups? Like, how can we do a better job to bridge that gap and submit know-how and tips and recommendations?
Yeah, I mean, I think just like with financing, which Lauren answered brilliantly, it's the same with mentorship. It's the same things as with classic startups. You help them in early stages as angels by providing mentorship. Also in later stages, same things. It's about contacts. It's about opening doors. It's about letting them avoid some of the mistakes we all made ourselves when scaling companies, and it's not much different from your regular companies. And I think we all and all angels and VCs and who are in this field should strive to do this.
Excellent. Okay, so I'm looking at the watch basically. So maybe we have one more question or discussion point. So what do we think? How much time do we need to see the first impact unicorn? Is it a question of years, or is it a question of months, maybe?
I mean, they exist. There's already a Babel, there's a Beyond Meat. I mean, there are already impact unicorns. I think kind of the question is, when are we going to see as many impact unicorns in Europe as we see sort of normal unicorns?
What do you think, Lauren? What's your?
I would say let's give it a nice round 8 years.
8 years, okay.
Maybe 5.
Fabian, what do you think?
Yeah, 5 to 8. I think that's a fair bet. I mean, ultimately, it's also a question how pure or basically how ambitious do you set the definition of impact company by and large? Yeah. So I mean, while I think you can argue that Elon Musk always had energy transition towards broad electrification with all of his companies, Tesla, SolarCity, etc., in mind, and achieved a great impact. For example, when you look at Zoom, no one has we here tonight, no one has basically avoided as many flights and emissions from air and other business travel as Zoom. But was it founded with the intention to save the planet? Probably not. Did it make a big impact? Probably yes. Yeah. So it's a bit of it's a matter of the definition, and we have. I mean, Lauren was speaking to it also on the health tech side, but also then, I mean, look at Insect, look at Infarm. If you include Volocopter, Lilium, so there's many companies approaching unicorn status from the broader impact ecosystem now, and I think the momentum is absolutely there. And if I may add one point here to also what Tim just said about how to support, I think from an investor standpoint, it's just really important to make clear towards the founders that also the investors are fully aligned on putting impact KPIs on same level and same importance as the traditional commercial KPIs, and reassure them that this is absolutely okay to have that front and center.
Yeah, I would just add one point, which is not just capital or like the concept or the idea. It's people, it's talent, right? So like the more attractive a given company could be as a startup, and the more impactful or commercially sustainable when it comes to impact, the more AAA talent will move to these kind of companies, right? And so talent moves first, and then also the capital moves after the talent. Yeah, so it's a war of talent also, not just a war of capital. So I'm positive I can see this happening potentially quite soon, 4, 5, 6 years maybe, because ambitious people choose ambitious jobs, and they want to be surrounded by ambitious people. So maybe that's the tipping point. Like it's all about talent, and then capital will move in the right direction. Tim, what do you think? 4 or 5 years, 8 years, 10 years, 2 years? What's your guess?
Just like my colleagues have said, it depends a lot on the definition. There are ones around, but if go to a pure play, I mean, in my portfolio, for example, ecosia.org would be the most pure play of a impact startup with I mean, it started as an angel investment for me. We then transferred it into a nonprofit, but it runs like a normal company. That would be the purest form of an impact. I think they are getting there. I think to give it 2 or 3 years, then Ecosia would be a unicorn if it would be on the market. It's not on the market, which is the beauty of startups like that. They have no market value. The value is to society and to the climate in this case, but not to the financial markets, which begs the question: is unicorn the right definition for success, or should we choose something else?
Yeah, good point. Congrats on Ecosia. Well done. Yes. Okay, Catherine, just looking at my watch, how are we doing?
It's time to move on. Thank you, Lauren, Fabian, Tim, Alex, for that thoughtful conversation. I think we are now ready for our pitches. And I must say, I'm quite sad that we can't be here in person, but also recognizing that the carbon footprint of this event is minimal. So that's the upside of having to do everything digitally now. We have 7 notable judges joining us who will select the top 3 finalists from this outstanding group. Lauren, you've met from Revent. Tim, you've also met. Joining us as well is Judith Dada from La Familia. We have Kiana Mardi from MicroVC, Julian Teike from WeFox, Lars Reger from Deutsche Telekom Hubraum, and Carl Louis Riefer from TS Hyundai Cradle. So thank you for dedicating your time for fielding the inquiries, and we're going to get going with our first startup that's coming to us from Tallinn, Estonia, by the name of Gelatex. Gelatex has invented the fastest and over 90% cheaper technology for bio-based nanofibers production. This makes large-scale use of bio-based nanofibers possible in many health and sustainability-related applications, such as cultured meat, wound care, energy storage, or filtration. We have Mert Erik Martens presenting on behalf of them.
Hi, my name is Mert Erik, and I'm going to let you into the world of nanofibers and tell you how our materials are going to change the world. Nanofibers are tiny fibers that are over 100 times smaller than a human hair. Because of unique properties that they possess, they are used in a variety of different industries, such as filtration, energy storage, but also tissue engineering, wound care, and cultured meat. The demand is growing, especially for bio-based and eco-friendly ones, but currently there are no good ways how to produce these materials on a large scale. Because of that, one A4 size material with a weight of only 1 gram can cost thousands of euros, which means that many products that are really sustainable and health focused will never get commercialized because it's just not worth it. Gelatex's patent pending method is the fastest technology to produce bio-based nanofibers on a large scale. Currently, the most common method for nanofiber production is electrospinning, but the biggest industrial unit of it that cost 8 million to build makes only 360 grams of material per hour. Our semi-industrial prototype can already output 4 times more material, and that's just the beginning. Besides offering better price, we can already produce materials with a better morphology and structure that are more similar to the extracellular matrix. This is highly beneficial in wound care, tissue engineering, and clean meat industries. Stable quality, scalability, and ability to work with a variety of different raw materials are just some benefits that are attractive for our customers. Our aim is to help to accelerate many health and sustainability focused industries by becoming a leading materials technology company. We do that by providing up to 100 times cheaper nanofiber manufacturing service for technology companies that use nanofibers in their products or processes. In addition, we are doing vertical integration in tissue engineering and cultured meat market. Nanofibers market is growing 36% a year. The use of nanofibers in life sciences and biotechnology grows even 74% annually. This is why we are focusing right now on these sectors, which have low volume, high margin markets, but the potential for growth is huge. As we scale up, we are also moving to high volume markets such as filtration and energy storage. We have already paying customers and have already caught the interest of many leading companies from different industries. With only 400,000 of prior funding, we have fully functioning prototype machinery, technology is patent pending, product validated with customers, and over 85,000 euros of total revenue coming from scaffold sales samples and development services. Our goal for the next years are to build certified pilot production facilities, commit 10 customers to use our product on an industrial scale, and to increase our sales and marketing activities by becoming #1 scaffold provider in cultured meat industry already in 2022. We are a team of Techstars-backed materials technology people in experience in materials technology, materials science, engineering, and business development. We have included advisors from a variety of different sectors in chemistry, tissue engineering, and many more. Nanofibers are key for accelerating many sustainability and health-focused industries, and if you're interested to join us, please let us know. Thank you.
Thank you, Mert-Erik. We are going to open the floor, and so what we're doing is we're allowing 2 statements or questions from the judges per session. So I invite judges to chime in. First one to the plate, it's like Jeopardy, gets to ask the question. Judith.
Hi, I'd love to understand a little bit more about the actual client side of your business. So we know how scalable is the solution, what type of equipment do they need to be able to work with nanofibers, what types of changes might be necessary in terms of their existing technological setup to be able to produce this at scale?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. So I will focus on our main application, which is tissue engineering, wound care, and cultured meat, which, the materials are quite similar in all those 3 applications. And let's say in wound care and tissue engineering, they are already familiar with nanofibers. But in our case, we can just offer a better price, reduce the cost multiple times, and that's the main impact there. If you talk about cultured meat or clean meat industry, which is, a growing trend right now, they are currently choosing the scaffold materials that they want to use on a large scale. And that's why it is, for us, it's really important to push our material forwards right now because then they will, start using tons in the future. Yeah, hope I answered your question.
Do we have anyone else who wants to make a statement or ask a question?
Let me jump in. Great energy. Thank you for the presentation. My question is on your plan with the milestones you've laid out. What is the #1 challenge for you and your team?
#1 challenge, I would say, is to like I said, it is right now really important for us to push our material into clean meat industries. And I mean, we have been doing a great job there, but still there are few companies, top leading cultured meat companies that we're still trying to get in contact with. So I would say in general, it is to make our scaffold, you know, like a go-to scaffold in cultured meat industries. So all of those companies would be familiar of our product, would see the benefits of it, and will start using it on a large scale. So this is something that we're focusing on right now heavily, and I would say this is something that we need to do for the duration of this seed round we're raising.
Cool. Thank you. All right, moving on. We have Justus from Barcelona. Justus is represented by Germán León. Justus is a deep tech company and the brain behind the eyes/cameras in spaces and objects. Their technology is able to see and understand human behavior and motion using edge technology in real time. Germán, are you here, ready to?
Hello everyone, my name is Germán León. I'm the CXO and founder of Justus. Justus is an artificial intelligence that has been developed to see and understand human behavior, whether it's in physical spaces or mobile devices or devices that contain cameras. Our technology is able to understand not only hand gestures, but actual physical movement and all sorts of activities, from connecting gestures to the HMI of a vehicle, all the way to seeing and understanding any type of activity and behavior in motion. Here you can see some of the examples of our technology in action. The problem has been that computer vision has the ability to resolve multiple problems. It's been like a great solution. But the problem relies on the fact that it requires a lot of data. And therefore, a lot of these AIs are depending on the cloud in order to be solvable. That has turned applications to be very inefficient. It requires a lot of computational power, and sometimes they're not economically viable. Our technology is completely different. It works on the edge. And through that fact, we're able to focus on two markets, transportation and mobility, as well as digital spaces. Many companies are using Justus today, and our software is being used in a variety of brands and different use cases. Our unique technology has been evaluated by leading tier ones and has scored the highest based on our patent robust detection, combination of shape and movement, as well as our ability to understand human behavior in real time using unique edge local detection. We have, as well as a suite of tools that will allow any OEM to be able to understand and train any activity that happens. The benefits of our product are three. Mainly to increase sales and brand awareness by improving the experience through activity monitoring and detection of behaviors, by also reducing the infection through non-touch technology, given the fact that we have COVID-19 today, and that's something quite important to have hygienic spaces, and ultimately to increase safety by seeing and understanding what's going on locations, on physical spaces. We can count people, we can see the distance between the people, we can see suspicious sick behavior, and so on. In transportation, we're planning to sell a dedicated intelligent snapshot of what's happening inside of the car before, during, and after any anomalous event. And for us, an anomalous event is any activity, from talking into the phone as a passenger or a driver, from relating to any sort of situation, such as I'm spilling coffee on my shirt, and this could cause an accident. Anything that can be tagged as human behavior can be understood. All of that done respecting people's privacy and being GDPR compliant. Our solution is low cost, is plug and play, and ready to go. We have a market opportunity of almost 115 million euros in transportation, as well as in smart spaces and consumer electronics, or roughly 140 million. This is based on specific use cases that we're tackling both with the OEM industry as well as with the aftermarket. In the transportation space, we can do things like driver monitoring, crash detection services, detecting pets and toddlers, the full litigation for car rental, and rider and passenger violence for ride-sharing services. We have a great partnership with multiple companies that are helping us in our sales and marketing support, as well as cutting-edge hardware. Our customers are really happy, and as you can see, we're being awarded multiple. We have a lot of awards for our great technology. Our team is combined of both experienced CEO, Marcel and I, who are running the product side of things, Marcel being a PhD in computer vision, and myself being a product designer that has been in this industry for a long time. I hope you like our pitch, and I hope you, if you have any questions, please don't doubt or hesitate to ask you. Thank you so much. Hello.
Hello, hello. So do we have any judges stepping up?
Yeah, I would go first. Hi, this is Carl speaking. I'm with Hyundai CVC team back in Berlin. This is a very classy OEM kind of use case you showed to us, and it's very interesting to see that as well. To be frank, I also saw a couple of companies trying to do that. It seems like you are looking into various use cases, but you also have very different sales multiplication channels. Can you enlighten us a bit more on how to do that? I know working with a OEM is extremely hard for a small company. Can you probably guide us through your customer journey a bit and share with us what are basically the highlights and lowlights you are seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first challenge that we have, as well as one of the first things we need to do, is to get customer buy-in, to make sure that we have at least we have the platform being acquired by the OEM. If the OEM is interested, if the OEM sees the value on it, typically speaking, they made us talk to a tier one who then will do the embedment of the platform and the security validation and so forth. In that second process, what we've learned is a lot of tier ones have their own technology. And then we end up in a bit of a competition. Hopefully, so far we've won against themselves. So that's a very, very difficult space and very, very tricky. But through the uniqueness of our technology, we managed to be one of the key players in this industry. We have currently basically only 2 additional competitors that we are actually bidding actively on the 65 OEMs through multiple tier ones. We have close relationships with particularly 2 tier ones. One in Asia, another one in Europe. There's a lot of geographical positioning on the tier one space. We've learned that the process is actually going really well. The big question was for us, let's say 2 years ago, if you asked me how are we doing, I would tell you the biggest challenge will be adoption of the technology. But this year, actually, what we learned is that there is adoption. All the OEMs are actually asking for this type of technology, and the key and differentiating thing from us to other companies is the fact that this works disconnected. You don't need to be connected to the cloud. We're doing the local learning on device. We're not increasing the payload, meaning the size of the model does not change. So if you have a car that is going to be in the road for 10 years, the CPU of that vehicle does not need to be changed because the models will continue learning and you don't need to increase the size of that. That's our secret sauce. That's what makes us unique and different. And that's how allows us to actually be able to scale our solution in the market.
Anyone else?
Thank you, yeah.
No, any takers? Okay, well then we're going to move on. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, our next startup is coming to us from Zurich, Switzerland. It's Chris McCall with Photokite, which helps public safety teams save lives with elevated and actionable intelligence at the push of a button. Fully autonomous and field-proven, Photokite solutions are used daily by firefighters and first responders to assess, visualize, and document their incidents within seconds of arriving at the scene. Chris?
Hi, I'm Chris, CEO of Photokite. We're a 50-person team of autonomous vehicle and aerial robotics experts set out on a mission to help public safety teams save lives and preserve property. Our patented technology enables us to provide solutions that get installed in the top of fire trucks and public safety vehicles so that when the firefighter shows up to their scene, they push a single button and our system opens up, deploys itself, and flies up to 45 meters in height to provide the first responders with mission-critical information about their scene. From up there, we provide both thermal and regular video down to the ground to give those teams visibility and elevated intelligence over their scene. The information delivered from our system helps them size up and assess their incidents quickly and without drawing additional team resources like normal drones do. We actively use a tether to provide power up the line and data down the line to deliver fully autonomous situational awareness systems with 24-hour plus flight times. The real benefit to the user is the fact that they gain this information without ever piloting the system. It's fully autonomous and as simple as it gets. They simply push the launch button on the tablet, set their altitude and camera angle, and the system takes care of the rest. Once up in the air, the system is also set up to live stream that aerial information to other teams on the same site, or back at the fire station to provide more eyes on the scene than were possible before. They use this information to gain perspective and context on their incident, and then deploy their resources in a more data-informed way. Our focus markets are European and North American public safety segments, representing a 12.1 billion euro market opportunity. We have deployed our system with major fire departments like Paris, Milan, Zurich, New York, Chicago, Kansas City, Los Angeles, and many more. These customers are using their systems on a daily basis to gain the aerial information they need to save lives and keep their teams safe. As we first started delivering our product in 2019, we quickly gained the feedback that by integrating a system with mobile network connectivity, a local Wi-Fi network, and high compute power capabilities in the base station of our product, we were unblocking the capability of fully digitalizing the public safety incident scene. Personnel tracking, video analytics, measurement, mapping, and reconstruction, all of these were now possible given the unique vehicle-based system we continued to develop. So fire and public safety teams sign on to purchase or lease Photokite systems for installation into their vehicles, and they all end up signing on to service contracts that can build out over time with additional software service layer offerings, establishing the Photokite as a digital data hub at fire and emergency response scenes. We have already signed on the top 2 worldwide market leaders as distribution partners as early identifiers of this game-changing capability. Oshkosh, the worldwide leader in fire truck manufacturing, is building these right into the top of their fire trucks. Axon, the worldwide leader in connected device supply to public safety, is providing these to their North American customer base as an integrated solution in their incident response platform. Those partners and several more recently established in European markets are providing a ramp up in orders and installation base over the next 3 to 5 years, soon to make this system the most widely used public safety unmanned aerial system in the world. We are currently backed by some incredible investors like Sony, Credit Suisse Entrepreneur Club, Qualcomm Ventures, and 360 Capital Partners. In addition, we've received support through a European Commission Horizon 2020 SME Phase 2 grant worth 2.5 million euros. Additionally to that, we've also won the world's largest unmanned aerial systems accelerator, Genius New York, for a grand prize of $1 million US.
Awesome. Thank you. Do we have any questions for Chris? Hello.
Hi, I'm jumping in. So what do I understand as your competitive barrier in that space?
Our competitive barrier really comes down to full autonomy, right? So what we've created and what we've protected with our patented IP is really the ability for any tethered system to autonomously fly all by itself, independent of GPS and independent of piloting. And those are really some really key barriers that are separating the real world use of drones in public safety on a scalable factor. That's really what we uniquely do.
Anyone else?
Thanks for the pitch. I think very, very exciting technology, and I can tell that it drives a lot of value. I'd love to understand a little bit more about your go-to-market and sales. So you sell to basically public services. You mentioned the Paris Fire Department, a couple of others. These are notoriously, hard to sell into. So, what are some of the multiplication and acceleration effects that you can pull off to be able to seed the whole process up more.
Absolutely. And in fact, that really informed our distribution strategy. So by partnering with these world leaders in vehicle manufacturing and equipment providing in these public safety markets where those relationships have been built for decades, we're able to immediately get into the market, seed those large departments with a handful of units. And then what we see is they end up rolling them out to every single one of their stations because they identify this key enabling technology as something that scales a lot more than traditional free-flying drone programs that need a lot of piloting.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Chris. Now moving on, we're coming to Hamburg, Germany with Apanion and Tobias Bonhoff. The team of Apanion fights climate change on the road, at sea, and in the air. Their freight transport emission service, Shipzero, enables shippers to turn climate goals for their supply chain into data-driven actions.
Hi, my name is Mirko.
And I'm Tobias.
And first of all, thanks a lot for having us at the Extreme Tech Challenge. Tobias and I started Apanion Labs with the vision to bridge the gap between technology on the one side and sustainability on the other side. And being based in Hamburg, one of the leading logistics centers in Europe, we focus on the area of transportation. With our product Shipzero, we've built a smart data platform to analyze and reduce transport emissions in a data-driven way. Extreme challenge that we face is that we all know that our house is on fire and we have to act fast. But as of today, climate impact is not reflected in logistics costs at all. To reach the 1.5 degrees goal of the Paris Agreement, we need to reduce global transport emissions by 64% until 2050. Our current path, though, would lead to an increase of over 70% until then. To be aligned with that goal would cost the industry an additional 37 billion euros in this year alone, and the value is going to rise about 15-fold to more than 500 billion euros annually by 2030.
To effectively avoid, reduce, or compensate for freight emissions, we need to have a very precise understanding of how, when, and where emissions originate. So how does it work?
First, we integrate data across various systems, like transport management, telematics, or routing data. Second, we calculate greenhouse gases for all transport or even product levels based on comparable global standards. And third, we analyze the data to support optimal decision-making, for example in transport planning or in investing into green transport assets. So ultimately, it's a much-needed tool for companies to support their transition towards zero freight emissions.
Our customers are buyers of transport services. This includes manufacturing industry, chemicals, textile, automotive sector, and of course, logistics service providers. All of them face three major challenges to which we contribute reliable databases. First, an increasing demand from shareholders and customers to disclose Scope 3 transport emissions publicly. Second, translating climate pledges into actual measures without controlling the transport asset itself. And third, establish a trusted information exchange between the transport parties to collaboratively improve the quality and safety of services. We charge for Shipzero in a consumption-based software as a service model where individual transports start as low as 2 cents per shipment. Small carriers who provide data to the platform can onboard for free. In our team, we are currently 8 data scientists, engineers, and sustainability experts. We launched Shipzero earlier this year with selected pilot customers and are now seeing extreme tailwinds from the industry. So to keep up with demand, we need to move quickly and we need to convince smart and pragmatic people to join our mission. As employees and of course as investors. Let's Shipzero together.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Do we have any questions?
Hi, I have a question. Thanks for the great pitch. Really enjoyed that. I mean, we've seen now a number of basically providers of different forms of carbon accounting SaaS, right, across the value chain.
Yes.
I'd be curious to hear your take on whether you see a risk that other providers will indeed try to become more comprehensive and potentially really compete in the same space, or whether you how you would describe your competitive and defensible advantage with your focus.
Yes. So I think the first thing, you're totally right. The competitive space in general, carbon accounting or carbon footprinting is getting more and more intense. But what most of the companies, I think, do not see is the complexity of supply chain. So there are so many different parts. And the problem here is that the conversion factors, the traditional way of calculating emissions is just taking conversion factors and then getting to the result. And if you work in a stable environment, that's totally fine. If you convert electricity, kilowatt hours, etc., into emissions, that's totally fine. But if you're looking at the logistics industry, at the transportation market, then you will see that the change in fuels, in renewable propulsion technologies that right now moves to the market will change the space dramatically over the next 10 years. And to reflect that, you will need a specialized solution. So we are very open to collaborate with other providers who do a more holistic approach. But I think our expertise in the supply chain logistics sector is really valuable for the shipper companies, but also maybe for other partners in the ecosystem.
Do we have any other questions or statements? No? Then we're going to move on. Thank you. Next up, coming to us from Grenoble, France, is Jules Hammond. He is from BFC, which makes electricity with papers and enzymes. They produce paper biofuel cells as an eco-friendly and sustainable energy solution for low-power applications.
Hello, my name is Jules Hammond, and I am the CEO and a co-founder of BFC. At BFC, we make electricity with papers and enzymes, providing a sustainable and environmentally friendly energy solution for low-power electronics. Our motivation was a huge trend towards smart and connected devices, with an estimated 50 billion connected devices in 2020. The problem is the majority of these devices are powered by coin or button cell batteries, which are complicated and expensive to recycle. This resulted in an estimated 15 billion primary batteries ending up being disposed by landfill or in incineration last year. And for miniature batteries, the percentage is around 97%. Our solution is a paper-based biofuel cell. Lightweight, thin and flexible, it is ideal for wearables and smart packaging. Our technology is both metal and plastic free, providing a sustainable and environmentally friendly energy solution for low-power electronics. We are focused on low-power solutions, often combining a microcontroller with some MEMS sensors, flash storage, display and wireless transceivers. Our paper-based biofuel cells consist of cellulose and carbon papers, and through the use of two different enzymes we oxidize glucose and reduce oxygen to produce electricity. Our go-to market product is a flexible electronic patch, providing a range of sensors and wireless communication protocols, all powered by a BFC paper biofuel cell. We are currently in the process of industrializing our production, moving from a robotic sheet-to-sheet process to a roll-to-roll process. The business model is simple: sell our paper biofuel cells to other businesses, often in combination with a digital platform developed by BFC and optimized for the application. We also have a 6-patent portfolio developed by BFC, owned by CNRS, with an exclusive license for exploitation. And BFC are focused on replacing batteries and innovative solutions in markets including wearable, medical, single-use and single-patient devices, IoT, including smart agriculture and Industry 4.0, and logistics. The smart packaging market is expected to be worth $46 billion by 2025, whilst the IoT healthcare market is anticipated to reach a value of $150 billion by 2027. And BFC are already working with leading companies in these markets to develop the next generation of products, with anticipated yearly volume sales of between 10 million and 100 million units per product category. BFC are now working with clients via internal trials whilst focusing on industrializing the production process. We aim to open a Series A round in parallel with demonstration of mass production capability and sales order contracts from early adopters. Our competition is the status quo, coin and button cell batteries, and we also see trends towards flexible cells, but these are not necessarily green solutions. They are then energy harvesting technologies such as flexible PV. But PV is not always suitable for indoor environments or when the device is under clothing. Other energy harvesting technologies often provide erratic power generation. In comparison, BFC can provide stable energy generation from minutes to months, depending on the discharge profile. BFC is comprised of an interdisciplinary team of engineers, scientists, and business strategists, but mostly we are problem solvers. We then have a team of academics and interns, along with incredible investors and an advisory board with previous experience taking deep technology startups to IPOs, as well as leading major companies to success. BFC is situated on the Grenoble University campus with 5 laboratories and 3 offices, and BFC is honored to receive recognition from prestigious prizes such as CS 2021 Innovation Award, EDF Pulse Prize, and the UN WTO SDG winner for Category 7 Clean Energy. BFC has raised €5 million of funding, including a €3 million seed fund and further non-dilutive funds. Be sustainable, be innovative, BFC, and together power the future with nature.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening to Grenoble. Do we have questions coming in? Oh, 2 at the same time. Let's take Lars. He hasn't asked a question yet.
Sure, thanks. Great pitch. I'm wondering about the reusability of the devices you are powering. So do you imagine that you could somehow more go into one-time use of those devices, or could you actually replace the battery component you are providing in those devices as well?
Lars, you're completely right. At the moment, our strategy is to focus on single-use medical devices. It's a market that can absorb the profit margin. However, we do have a patent to store glucose in the device and also a separate patent to add a liquid reservoir, including a cartridge mechanism for refueling the glucose. Oxygen is then scavenged from the air, and we need around 1 milliliter of air for 1 milliwatt hour of operation. But it's definitely in the R&D roadmap for the next 2 years.
Carl?
Thank you very much. That's a very fantastic technology. Do you mind to share a bit more on the background of the team and what makes Grenoble so unique that you guys are? It seems to be a very strong relationship to the university and the area.
Super. I mean, Grenoble has a naturally strong ecosystem. It's supported by CNRS and CEA, 2 big research institutes. We have ST Microelectronics headquartered there as well as Roche Diabetes, Diablue, and things like this. In terms of biofuel cells, Grenoble is renowned for being world leading. We were the first group to implant biofuel cells into mammals. That was the original intention of the technology, to power pacemakers and insulin pumps. My background comes from 2 startups in the UK. I joined as a postdoc. I was born in Grenoble, returned to Grenoble, decided that there was this huge patent portfolio to monetize. I decided to pivot towards the trending wearable market and single patient medical markets. But packaging, actually, smart logistics seems to be a huge market for us, and we're working with Europe's largest packaging producer on solutions there.
All right, thank you, Jules, for your time. Now we're going to move on to Stefano Melchior from Barcelona with his company Beechained, which is an energy as a service platform to unlock new revenue streams for energy traders and business consumers from selling the energy flexibility into the energy market. This reduces millions of tons of CO2 and helps the electric grids be balanced and stable.
Hi, I'm Stefano, CEO of Beechained, the platform that generates new incomes from selling electric consumption in the energy market, balance the grid, and boost CO2 emissions reduction. More than 20 use cases in Italy. The second client about to sign in Spain. 1 year payback for our clients. You heard it correctly. Incomes from consumption, where it is rewarded the capacity to adjust consumption in factories and buildings as a response to the market need, the so-called energy flexibility. The problem that the grid operator faces is the high cost of grid imbalance and unpredictable availability of energy sources, like wind, for instance. In the European Union only, this specific cost of the grid operation is more than 20 billion euros per year. On the consumer side, business consumers like manufacturers and hospitals lack of real-time metrics to make strategic decisions and control consumption. With our solution, the utility firms have at their disposal the consumption from factories and buildings to trade it in order to generate new revenue streams. For consumer, it creates new incomes from the market, optimize production, reduce its cost and the CO2 emissions. And on top of that, we guarantee security and transparency of all the transactions throughout the platform through the energy tokenization. What differentiates our solution is our artificial intelligence platform built on a patented method to control consumption and production scheduling, providing a real-time consumption information to make strategic decisions, and a return on investment of 1 year. Our current competition is from large entities who rely on legacy solutions like load shedding and supply interruption or forecast from historical data. But our solution deploys a real-time automatic decision on actual consumption measurement at a far more affordable price. We make money through a subscription fee of about 20,000 euros per year and a revenue sharing from selling the energy flexibility in the energy market. We have a team of 3 who previously worked together in HP. I purchased energy for multinational enterprises, and we had more than 20 years of experience in creating and managing developers in DevOps operations roles. We plan to acquire clients to direct sale activity to utility first and consumer second. That is why we look for a sales director with a B2B expertise. We project that we can reach revenue of more than 20 million by 2024. We have secured our first 90,000 euros contract, and we are raising a round pre-seed of 500,000 euros. It used to be that the energy market were accessible only to energy producers, who only reacted to consumers' increase of demand through increase of production. But now the energy markets have opened up to consumers. And that means that the consumer can now monetize their energy flexibility, help the grid resilience, and reduce the global carbon footprint. And Beechained links all of this seamlessly. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your presentation. Hello. Good
You're
evening.
welcome. Good evening.
Do we have any energy experts and inquiries from the panel of judges? No? Is anyone chiming in? Here we go.
Yeah.
Judith, hello.
So we've seen a range of these technologies, and customer acquisition and go-to-market tends to sometimes be a challenge. Could you, talk a little bit more about your overall sales and marketing strategy?
Yes, thank you so much, Judith, for your question. Our go-to-market strategy is to go to the aggregators, the utility firm first, because they are the only one allowed to trade the flexibility in the market. But on the other side, they also have clients who provide or supply the energy, so they can advocate the usage of our platform for them to provide new added value services, not only a tariff for the energy supply. So this is the first idea. The second one is to go directly to the consumer, but it will be slower because we need to deploy a very large sales force to get traction in the market. But it is necessary to aggregate any dimension of business user starting from 4 gigawatt hours of consumption per year. So it means small and large enterprises.
Thank you.
Just quickly, so you talked about this 90K contract. Can you take us through the sales cycle? How long did it take? What were the different steps? How repeatable is it? Can you give us some more details?
Okay, so this is the first client here in Spain. We have already validated the technology with more than 20 use cases in Italy. So, sorry, to take this kind of B2B relationship, it costs a long time. So it's a very spending time, but very useful because we have to understand the issue at the customer and the production side, but also we have to create the advocacy, the evangelist activity in order to sensibilize the client to generate new revenue stream from selling an asset, and it doesn't know he has this asset, so the consumption, and this is a long process. That is why we are looking to raise capital in order to enlarge our sales force, because we need to develop a B2B kind of activity, which is, as you said before, pretty long and based on trust. So we need to have to onboard a professional with a certain expertise on that. That is why we look for a sales director first, and then for other trusted person. And of course, to accelerate this kind of activity can be helpful to create a partnership with a utility firm, an aggregator, who is first involved in selling, trading in the market, and of course, onboarding the clients.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Now we're moving on to Antje Wegemann with Margot Health, based in Berlin/New York. Margot Health's mission is to transform the reporting process for gender violence crimes by improving evidence collection. Margot's redesigned sexual assault evidence kits, rape kits, provide a more seamless collection process for healthcare workers, and its integrated digital platform prepares gender violence victims with what to expect when getting a kit, allows them to track their kit once it's completed, and helps them better document their cases. Antje?
Sexual assault is a global health epidemic. And in the US, someone is sexually assaulted every 73 seconds. But of those many crimes, only 30% choose to report, and less than 1% of all of those cases end in a conviction. Which means that the current way to seek help to report is broken. And that's through a sexual assault evidence kit, commonly known as a rape kit. These kits are inaccessible and disproportionately available to whiter, wealthier neighborhoods in the US and all over the world. And so to better understand how bad the problem is, here's what a sexual assault evidence kit looks like. It's typically a box that contains about 10 to 15 envelopes with tools and instructions inside. Sexual assault is a global health epidemic. And in the US, These kits impact primarily healthcare providers who collect the evidence and victims who experience the assault. So imagine that you just experienced a traumatic assault and you can't find help. You then have to go to multiple hospitals because these kits are only available in select emergency rooms. And then when you finally find one, you're poked and prodded and questioned for up to 10 hours, and you may then not even have the ability to track your kit and make sure it's tested. For healthcare providers, these kits are designed for what's called a sexual assault nurse examiner, or SANE nurse. And only 13% of hospitals in the US have SANE nurses, so that means the majority of these kits are actually being collected by emergency room providers, many who have never even seen a kit before. So it's no surprise they describe the process as overwhelming, confusing, and sometimes they even turn victims away to avoid not doing them. Margot is transforming the reporting process for gender violence crimes by improving evidence collection for victims, nurses, labs, and police through a redesigned sexual assault evidence kit and integrated digital platform. It's an end-to-end service providing care the moment an assault occurs through the management of each victim case. Starting with the kit, we've researched and taken the current kit senior and redesigned it to provide a more seamless experience, reducing the time and the cost of an exam, and also include tracking and scanning, which improves documentation between nurses and police. With the digital platform, victims can see what to expect before the exam, can follow along on the platform in real time, taking control of their exam. And then once it's complete, victims, nurses, and police can all track the kits and manage the case as needed. Currently, our competitors are providing either plain forensic kits or controversial do-it-yourself kits. Margot is different because we not only improve the experience for victims, but for all of those involved in the evidence collection process and through design. We will start selling to cities and states who currently purchase the kits, shifting distribution from only 13% of hospitals to all of the healthcare facilities to increase accessibility. The kits will be sold for $25 per kit, reaching 43 million with just 30% of the market, and selling the platform to cities and states with a subscription model for an additional 2 million annually with just 20 of the 50 states. Because these kits are used for domestic violence victims as well, we have the potential to provide care to over 20 million victims of gender violence annually. As the founder, I gained firsthand experience with this process as a sexual assault advocate in a New York hospital, and I've used my background in design and governance research to help develop Margot. I have a team that specializes in business development, partnerships, and medical product quality assurance. So far, we've partnered with organizations who already have a strong presence in the space, such as the Joyful Heart Foundation, the International Association for Forensic Nurses, and are also partnering with adjacent companies. We've won various awards, including Fast Company's 2020 World Changing Ideas Award, and received various forms of press and speaking engagements. We've received $35,000 in funding so far, and are looking for $500,000 to progress the kit and platform into production, so that we can fundamentally change the way we respond to gender violence victims, so that they can finally seek the justice they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Antje.
Good evening.
Good evening to you. Do we have any statements or questions coming from our panel? Get some in.
Thank you. Oh, Judith, sorry. Thank you so much. I think you're addressing a very, very important problem. And I would just like to understand the process a little bit better, as I'm unfamiliar to the process and the requirement why it needs a physical kit and why that entire process could not be done in a completely digital format. Is that a regulatory requirement? So what's keeping us from, essentially just providing a completely digital way of filing a complaint and managing that process without a physical kit?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for any sort of gender violence crime, the victim's body becomes the form of evidence. So essentially they have to go through a long exam to figure out, collecting the evidence, whether it's different DNA swabs, collecting their clothing. And so that's exactly what the kit does. And so it allows for many victims who end up collecting the evidence immediately after their crime to potentially wait as long as they like to report the crime, because often these aren't such simple crimes. They're often people that the victim knows, and so they might not feel comfortable reporting right away. And that's what the kits really help them do.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for sharing more about what you're building. I think it's an incredibly important topic. I'd love to understand how you think about, KPI measurement in terms of, the core metrics you want to track in terms of really improving the experience that women who go, or men potentially who go through this have when it comes to, when it comes to the overall process. Like, what are the core KPIs, and what are maybe some early indicators that really show that your kit can significantly improve that overall process?
Yeah, so I think there's two parts of that, which is what the victims experience, and then also what the healthcare providers and the police experience as well. So on the healthcare provider side, because they are the ones that are collecting the evidence, this is something that right now takes about 10 hours. And so it's something that becomes extremely costly, and it's a huge cognitive overload for them. And so some of the metrics there are really making sure that our kit reduces the time that it takes. And so that we're also then reducing some of the costs as well. And then from the victim end, these kits are really just pretty inaccessible, and there's already such low reporting rates. So our goal is that improving this process on both ends of it could then also allow us to measure, are we increasing reporting rates, and then also conviction rates from those reported kits.
Great, thank you, Antje. So up next, we have Fagomed Biopharma from Vienna, Austria, with Alexander Belcredi. Fagomed uses synthetic biology to design precision antibacterials, small proteins called lysins, that kill harmful bacteria without touching the beneficial ones.
We are just getting to terms with the current pandemic. And yet, we already know what the next health crisis is going to be. We've all read that antibiotics are losing their edge, that bacteria are becoming resistant. And that means we urgently need new drugs. My name is Alexander Belcredi. I'm the CEO of Fagomed, where we are working on solving the antibiotic resistant crisis once and for all. For example, in women's health. What you see here is a microscopic image of the vaginal sample from a patient who we call Lisa. Lisa has a vaginal infection called bacterial vaginosis. In bacterial vaginosis, bad bacteria, which you can see here in yellow, invade the vagina and form a thick biofilm on the vaginal epithelial cells. It's a very unpleasant disease. And even worse, in the case of Lisa, it's really difficult to treat. Lisa has had this vaginal infection for more than 3 years. She's gone through countless numbers of antibiotics, but the bacteria are simply resistant. Antibiotics can no longer kill them. This is one example of the need that we have to develop new drugs that work where antibiotics fail. But the reality is, if we develop a new generation of drugs, then they should not only work, they should also be much more precise. We need to stop killing the good bacteria in our body every time we need to get rid of the bad ones. And we know exactly where to turn. We need to turn to a new class of drugs called lysins. Lysins work a bit like explosives. They recognize the chemical bonds in the cell wall of bacteria and then break them open, which kills the bacteria. Lysins also really precise. Each type of bacteria, each species of bacteria has a slightly different cell wall chemistry. And that means an explosive that works on one type of bacteria will not work on another type. Best of all, human cells have a completely different cell wall chemistry. Lysins only work against bacteria. At Fagomed, we found a way to develop lysins extremely fast. We've developed a synthetic biology platform that allows us to predict the structure of an ideal lysin on the computer using our database of genomic information. We then test hundreds and thousands of variants in a high throughput process to end up with the perfect drug candidate, which we then patent. For example, against bacterial vaginosis. We went through this process and found a highly potent lysin against the yellow bacteria. You can see the result in Lisa's vaginal sample. The lysin completely destroys the yellow biofilm that was resistant to many courses of antibiotics. And what's left in red are the good bacteria, the ones that we don't want to kill. This drug alone has blockbuster potential, but our vision is so much bigger. Using synthetic biology, we can develop lysins for many different applications extremely fast, which means we can counter antibiotic resistance, we can precisely intervene in microbiomes, and we can prevent future pandemics. We've put a great team in place to scale our platform. Our management team includes biotech veterans and business experts. We have a board led by Nell Moore, who used to lead the anti-infectives division at AstraZeneca, and we partner with the leading clinicians in the fields that we enter. For example, in bacterial vaginosis, where Professor Sobel, Professor Mutzny, and Professor Schwebke write the US guideline for how to treat bacterial vaginosis. We're now ready to scale our synthetic biology platform, and we'd love to partner with you to make that happen. Thank you.
Alexander.
Hi, good evening.
And good evening. Excellent. Do we have any comments, questions? Lauren and Kiana, you both get a slot. You just decide who speaks first.
Go for it.
Okay, I hope my reception is a little bit bad, but I hope you hear me well. The pharma industry probably will target markets that are big enough. Is that a reason why they didn't invent your method right now, or what is the situation, and who's your competitor?
Mm-hmm. So the good news is that lysins are slowly moving ahead. They're being established as a drug class. The most advanced lysin is now in a phase 3 trial in the US and has shown efficacy in trials before that. But they're all based on essentially natural lysins, the version that you can pick out of nature. But what we really need to move this asset class forward is to vastly optimize them. And that's what we do. We develop synthetic lysins, we build the best possible type of structure to address a certain pathogen. And that's the step forward that the field now needs. In terms of the pharma field, I think antibiotic resistance is where climate change was 10 years ago. We know there's a problem, we're just not quite sure that we need to address it. And so pharma companies have so far been reluctant to push that space forward. That's again slowly moving forward, but we still need pioneer companies to do the heavy lifting.
Nice. Lauren?
Thanks for the presentation, really interesting. I'm just wondering, with this specific use case for BV, can you talk a bit more about the pathway to commercialization? This wasn't clear to me kind of how the timelines are, what the steps are, and what the risks are along the way.
Sure. So we have our development candidate in place. We're now fine-tuning the formulation, which will be a vaginal suppository, and we're ready to start CMC in the summer. So our path is to start a first clinical trial end of next year, and then have first clinical data on safety and efficacy in 2023. Typically in biotech, that's the milestone at which you can enter into an out-licensing agreement with pharma companies. So that means we're about 2.5 to 3 years away from first commercialization and revenues.
Thank you very much. All right, we are on time and moving briskly. I like this. We are back in Berlin with Markus Teuber from Diamond Tech, which is a medical technology company committed to improving health outcomes for diabetes and empowering them to take control of their lifelong health. Its pioneered and patented non-invasive photothermal detection technology is accurate, convenient, painless, and doesn't require needles, test strips, or other consumables for diabetics to monitor their blood sugar level.
Hi, my name is Thorsten. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of Diamond Tech. Diamond Tech stands for Diabetes Monitoring Technology, and we have developed a new way to measure your blood sugar. Our solution is non-invasive. That means you don't have to finger prick anymore. Globally, more than 500 million people suffer from diabetes. Most are fearful of pricking their fingers. Today, I'd like to show you the performance of our first product, a tabletop device that we call D-Base. In order to demonstrate the performance of our technology, we tested against the conventional invasive glucometer and a minimal invasive CGM patch. During the test, we modulated the blood glucose by drinking a glass of apple juice. The participant continuously took measurements every 10 minutes for 2 hours on all 3 devices to track his glucose levels. We can see how the non-invasive glucose measurements in blue compare to those of the invasive device in red and the CGM patch in yellow. Our patented technology shows very promising results. Both analytical and clinical accuracy are similar to early stage CGMs that got approved by the FDA.
In addition to the tests shown here, we have performed a clinical study with 100 participants which confirms the shown accuracy and precision while expanding the glucose range from 50 mg per deciliter to 350 mg per deciliter.
The heart of our system is a new kind of laser called quantum cascade laser that shines light into the skin and specifically warms up glucose molecules. The temperature variations change the optical properties of our sensor crystal, which can be detected by the deflection of a red probe beam. This is as easy and safe as measuring your body temperature, for example. Currently in development is a laser at the size of a fingernail specifically designed to detect glucose molecules. This chip is first implemented in our upcoming handheld device that will be available for end users. The next step is further miniaturization of our glucose monitor at the millimeter scale based on photonic integration. These sensors can then be integrated in smartwatches or fitness bands. Right now we are finishing the development of our handheld device, the Pocket, so we can bring it into the market in 2022. To ensure a smooth ramp-up of production, we work together with a German service manufacturer so that each part is ready for mass manufacturing. Our business model is easy and affordable. People can lease the device for 150 euros per month, which is basically the same price point as minimal invasive devices. Our cost of goods is around 1,400 euros, and we already have pre-orders for 125,000 devices. The addressable market is huge, with $16 billion and still growing. For successful market entry in Germany, we collaborate with the German Association of Pharmacies that represents over 19,000 pharmacies. We also conduct pilot projects with 1 statutory and 1 private health insurance to expedite the reimbursement process. And of course, we'll have an e-commerce shop for self-payers. After Germany, we will expand our business to Europe and the United States. We enter Latin America and Asia through distributors by the end of 2023. Together we have a great opportunity to give our non-invasive technology to hundreds of millions of people. We believe that this technology will revolutionize the way people measure their blood sugar, and we hope that we improve the quality of life of millions of diabetics.
All right, thanks. Welcome this evening.
Oh, thank you.
So, do we have some comments? We do. Here we go. Tim. We'll start with Tim.
Hey there. So I already know 3 people I'm going to send the link of your website after this jury session. A brilliant product, much needed. I have a question on, I think there's no debate how your product is needed and if it works and everything. But the question to me here really is financing, is how are you financed? I mean, if you have 125,000 orders and you're pre-financing that and ramping up production, you must have a pretty massive capital need and then also a pretty massive working capital need. Can you elaborate a little bit more on your go-to-market and finance strategy in the next year?
Sure. First, what is good, demand is not a problem for us. So the problem shifted from demand to how do we mass produce all this stuff? And we won't be able to produce 125,000 devices in the first year. But what we are doing is we are selling devices month by month, getting cash in, and then using that cash to produce the rest. So it's a slight and steady ramp up for the production. Except we can get some more money in, then we can grow faster.
I'm wondering, do you see a market or a use case outside of let's say the like medical diabetes use case? So I mean, Apple basically showed with the Apple Watch that they somehow, like the ECG measurements, right? They put this out of the purely medical space into something that people do every day or like every week now, more or less, because it's tracked automatically. Do you see, I mean, I'm totally not an expert in your area, so I'm just wondering, do you see any kind of future use case where this can bring value even outside of those medical diabetes use cases?
Absolutely, and I'm one of the best examples of that. I'm not a diabetic, but I'm interested in the metabolism of my body. So I started measuring my glucose values, and then I find it annoying to prick my finger. So I was looking, how can we do it differently? And then I met this professor at the Goethe University who showed me a non-invasive approach, and that's why we started Diamond Tech in the end. Good thing is our technology is broader than that. We cannot detect only glucose molecules, but we can detect molecules in liquids and soft matter like skin. So after glucose, we can also looking after lactate, for example, in the skin, which would be also interesting for runners or any kind of sports people.
Thanks.
Just quickly, if I may. So we're talking 125K pre-orders, and you're talking 149 euros per month. So we're talking a ARR pipeline of 230 million euros. Is that correct?
That is correct. We would do it, and this was a question from Tim earlier on about the financing. What we like to do is to sell the device to a leasing agency, and the leasing agency then leases it out to the end consumer. So we get the full price upfront. So then you think more like 4,000 euro per device multiplied by 125,000 units.
But just two quick questions. I mean, number one, how did you generate the demand? And number two, how solid are these pre-orders? Are these LOIs? Are these contracts? What is it?
These are LOIs where the distributors needed to wire us some money. But in general, in the pre-orders, there are a couple of requirements we have to meet, like accuracy, and we need to be able to deliver it and stuff like that. But yeah, once we have it, we can deliver it, and then yeah, it's a pre-order.
All right, thank you. Now for our last pitch, we have Lumen from Cluj-Napoca, Romania, represented by Cornel Amarieri. Lumen develops glasses that help the blind live a better life. With 40 million blind individuals and just 20,000 guide dogs, there are 39,980,000 people who don't have access to an advanced mobility solution.
Hello, my name is Cornel Amarieri, and I'm the CEO and founder of Lumen, Empowering the Blind. I was born in a family where both of my parents have locomotive disabilities and my sister has cerebral paralysis. Growing up in such an environment, I really realized how much of an impact can technology bring to people with disabilities. And when we realized there are 40 million blind individuals in the world, we began looking what solutions are out there for them. When it comes to mobility and orientation, unfortunately, the same two solutions are thousands of years old, and that's the walking cane for the blind and the guide dog. The guide dog is an interesting solution. It unanimously well seen. Unfortunately, it has a few drawbacks. They cost enormously to be trained, $30,000 to $60,000, and that's not even the biggest problem. By far the biggest problem is that a blind individual can't properly take care of a guide dog on their own. And because of this, to 40 million blind individuals, there are only 28,000 guide dogs. These two numbers are not scalable. However, we realized that the main advantages, the main features of a guide dog, and then some, are replicable in technology without the drawbacks which make it a non-scalable solution. And so, we created the Lumen glasses. What they do is to semantically and contextually understand the world. They map how the world looks, where you can move, where you cannot, how you can interact with the world. They process everything internally, and then they offer auditory and haptic feedback to the user. Let me make an analogy. If you have a guide dog, you can ask it to take you to a door, take you to the stairs, take you to an empty seat, and they will do that. They will pull your hand there. With the Lumen system, you can actually ask it the same things, but rather than pulling your hand, they will actually pull your head. And they're able to go to new places, they're able to do things which unfortunately the guide dog can't do. We've been working over the last year on this thing, and we already built close to 100 iterations and prototypes, tested with over 200 blind individuals. We are growing an international partnership network which will deal with sales, marketing, maintenance, and training. Already we have partnerships in the United States, Latin America, Middle East, and Europe, and we are growing. Already we're seeing interest from various governments for pre-orders up to 10,000 units. Now, looking a bit at our milestones, right now we're in the design for manufacturing phase. We are preparing for the commercial launch of the system. We are preparing to manufacture it. Next step, of course, is the market entry, which comes later in this year. And at the beginning of next year, we're going to start the global expansion with partners for marketing, an increased sales network and partners network. Behind the company, I'm coming from the automotive field, where previously I was head of innovation in an automotive company. My co-founder, Professor Dr. Gabriel Kindris, he previously founded a research group which built everything from millions of appliances up to PCBs, up to electronics for space exploration. And Mihai, our chairman of the board, is the CEO and founder of companies which surpassed 100 million in evaluation. Together with us, we have a team of more than 35 engineers, scientists, professors, psychologists, industrial designers, and business developers. Thank you.
So, some thoughts, questions? Judith.
Thanks so much for the engaging pitch. I'd love to understand the safety critical systems that you're building. I mean, it sounds almost like you're facing, similar regulation and safety mechanisms that you would also do, face in autonomous driving or other technologies, especially when it comes to things like crossing the street and so on and so forth. So, how do you ensure that this doesn't harm any of your customers?
Sure. It's true. We're actually, a lot of us are coming from the automotive field, so it's not the first time we deal with those kinds of regulation. However, for the device which we're building, unfortunately, there are not that many regulations, but of course, that's the regulatory aspect. It's easy to get a CE mark for it. It's just a wearable. That is not a regulatory problem. It's a reputational problem in case anything bad happens. This is why we developed an entire flow regarding this, coming with the training, coming with the partners, the blind associations which we're discussing and working with, in order to make sure that users understand that the device gives input. However, it is not in the decision of the device what you are doing as a blind individual. Of course, with time, technology becomes more and more capable and we can enhance the security, but at this point, it's not a regulatory risk, it's a reputation risk, which we are working on.
Just to follow up to make sure I understand that correctly. So that is because the blind person could still be using other mechanisms like a stick or, to cross the street to make sure that no coming, because I mean that's kind of why they're relying on the device for. So, if in the end it's still the blind person's decision, then why have the device in the first place? So I'd love to understand that a little better.
Because the device enables things which were never before possible only by using a guide dog, copying the same, mimicking the same features of the guide dog, which in the end, the guide dog is not responsible for accidents that are happening. Actually, in a guide dog and blind users pair, it's not the guide dog who decides, it's always the blind user who decides what they do. The guide dog only offers input. They are not allowed to cross streets. They don't know how to cross streets, actually guide dogs. It's the user who does that. In our case, we're mimicking the same features. And with time and with the technology, at some point, and when regulations catch up, because at this point it's not a highly regularized market, then we will be able to comply to things which are closer to safety. At this point, it's a reputational risk, which we're dealing with, making sure the training process is clear for each user on how to use the device, and then repeated training with the international partner network, which we're growing.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have a statement or a question to ask Cornell? Not I do. You said that you were working with associations of the blind. So is it important to get their buy-in, and is there some type of certification or badge that they would provide, which obviously would then help?
Definitely. So when you're looking, marketing for the blind is very different than what you would normally call marketing. We need blind associations to present the product because they are the ones in direct contact with the blind. This is why we're growing international network in this, in order to not only have their feedback, but in the end, when we reach the market and everything, to have their support for training, for co-selling for some of them, for marketing efforts, and even in some cases for maintenance. So for us, blind association is actually our way to reach the end user, one of the ways, but the most important.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you very much. So that wraps up the pitch portion of the evening. We've got approximately 10 minutes that our judges can take to make their final assessments, and thereafter we'll announce the top 3, which will be invited to the XTC Bootcamp and category finals in June. So there they will pitch to another XTC board of finalists among the 80 that have been selected from the 2,500 that have come in globally. These startups will have the opportunity to connect with leading investors and execs from Samsung, Microsoft, Pitango, Cisco, Ford, Intel, Microsoft, and others. So while our judges are deliberating, we'll be streaming our newly released Creating in the Third Space. It's a docu-type look at the artistic milieu of Factory Berlin in conjunction with Sonar Plus D's Artist in Residence program and powered by Beats by Dr. Dre. And right after that, we're going to announce the finalist.
I mean, being a full-time artist is really intense, and I think to see everyone else kind of in the same boat, we're all just like on our laptops, like stressed, working on like 10 things at the same time. I think I was like, oh, okay, so it's not just like us doing this, it's like, oh, there's a whole community of other people who are also like in this mode and in this hustle, and I liked seeing that, and it made me feel like, oh, okay, this is great, because it can be kind of isolated.
Hi, I'm Sandira. I am a curator and researcher at Factory Berlin, and I lead the Artist in Residence program with Sonar Plus D and Beats by Dr. Dre. We started this residency with science, tech, and art, kind of the basis of our focus, and it makes sense to have such a program here at Factory Berlin, which is one of Europe's largest tech ecosystems. And so for artists to have access to a diverse variety of networks is really key here.
Well, my name is Cora Novoa, and I'm an electronic music producer based in Barcelona, Berlin, Barcelona. I'm working right now with Aaron. He's another artist from the residency, based in Berlin. He works more in augmented reality and also in immersive experience.
So the final product will be a live set where we are performing on stage, and we're being tracked by, for example, some depth camera, and we will use this footage to transform ourselves or bring ourselves into some semi-virtual space.
The idea of the project is to create an immersive experience, but focus on the dance floor.
My name's Tony Cruz. I'm a sound artist originally from Maryland, just outside of Washington, D.C. I had the pleasure of meeting Deja and Anya, and pretty early on in the residency we realized that we had a lot in common and kind of spoke the same language, so that really congealed into the installation that they have coming up. I'd rather be in a dark silence than...
You know, it really shaped the work, and it really shaped the exhibition, because I don't think we would have focused in and narrowed in into even the vocal aspect that Tony Cruz brought to our exhibition, we wouldn't have discovered that in the same way. So that was truly a collaboration. It took on a life of its own.
All of yours. Yeah, I wrote a poem for them and collaged and stitched together, kind of more bricolage, this sound piece, incorporating the poem, but also incorporating modular synths and drones and those kind of experimental sensibilities.
And we could do that spontaneously, and it really allowed us to not have to necessarily pre-plan, but have the ability to, improvise and ebb and flow in the process. And
yeah, that actually happened where Tony was out somewhere and he came back and he's like, I was just on the U-Bahn and I wrote the whole Privacy is Fake Now poem. And I was like, what do you mean you wrote it? He's like, it's done. And so he read it to me and he's like, should we go record this now? And I'm like, yeah. So then immediately we walked in here and then he recorded it. And it went from happened and was written on the S-Bahn, and then 40 minutes later he was in the studio recording it, and then we had it.
We're Studio Above and Below, made of
Perry James Sugden
and Daria Jelonek. We are a London-based artist duo working primarily with XR, augmented reality, and live data.
For our project at Factory Berlin, we have been exploring EEG signals and EMG, which are electrical signals from the brain, and using this as a starting point to explore how this data can augment an audio-visual experience.
So the project that I'm doing together with Studio Above and Below will collect data sets and will work with the EEG, EMG, brainwave.
And I think we have all the numbers in. So before we get to announcing the finalists, I do want to thank our supporters of the event. We have Revent, La Familia, TS Ventures, Early Bird, Micro VC, Update, Get Started by Bitkom, Hyundai Cradle, and Deutsche Telekom to thank for putting all the effort into this, for helping promote the competition. It's the first time that we partner on this in Europe, so it was a great learning experience for us, and especially for taking the time this evening and joining the pitches and providing your input. So one more note I wanted to make, which I forgot to mention before, is that the category winners from the 7 specific categories of the SDG will move on to the global finals, which will take place in July, mid-July, also virtually. And there, the finalists will be pitching to world-leading investors, including Bill Tai, Jung Sun, Lars Rigger, who's the CTO of NXP, Michael Zeiser from FMZ Ventures, and Jerry Yang, who's the founder of Yahoo. So, with no further ado, we have the top 3. In third, Fagomed. In second, Photokite. And in first spot, Diamond Tech. I want to congratulate you. We had such a broad scope of participants that came in from across Europe, and even this evening we saw really incredibly inspiring and cutting-edge technologies and solutions, and so it was not easy for our judges to make that call. But we want to congratulate everyone who participated for the impact that you're creating with your visionary ideas, and for developing tech for good solutions that promote environmental sustainability and social equality. So with that, we'll be in touch with the top 3, and I wish you a wonderful evening. Thanks.